Sir, the possibility of successfully navigating an asteroid field is approximately 3,720 to 1.
Never tell me the odds.
Hello, this is No, and I believe that if you take cranberries and stew them like applesauce, they taste much more like prunes than rhubarb does. Welcome to the After Effects Kickstart podcast.
Today on the podcast, I'm chatting with Marisabel Fernandez, an amazingly talented and really nice person who I think all of you are going to be really inspired by. Like Taylor, the person I interviewed last week, Marissa also knew what she wanted to do at a really young age. Not at like 10 years old like Taylor, but still, by the time she was in high school, she knew she wanted to work in motion graphics and design. Without giving too much away, what you're going to hear in this interview is actually not an uncommon story. Someone with a lot of focus who rises up very quickly at a young age, makes some impressive work, wins some awards, gets a good job at a studio, and then eventually, for whatever reason, decides that they really no longer want to work as a designer and an animator anymore. Maybe they want to change, or they decide that pushing keyframes around full-time just isn't satisfying them personally, or, sometimes people just get burnt out on this. This is a hard field, and, there's lots of deadlines and big personalities and a lot of pressures, and it can really sometimes hamper your creativity to work in those conditions. So, I think this is a really interesting lesson and something that I've seen happen to people that I know and that I've even really felt at various points in my own career. Especially if you're an ambitious and madly talented person like Marissa, I think the pressures are even higher. So I'm just really happy for her that she kind of figured it out and found, her new way to be inspired within our industry. Another thing that's really cool about this discussion is that Marissa talks a lot about visual effects, which is a huge kind of subcategory of this industry, or a kind of related part of this industry that uses a lot of the same tools. But it's something that we haven't really talked about much in this class. And I think some of you are probably really into that, and you'll be really excited to hear that discussion and how she goes into that industry. In any case, I think this is really going to be instructive for everybody listening, and also really fun. Marissa's a great storyteller, and she's a super honest person, so she really lays it out for us here. Let's jump in and hear what she has to say. Yeah, so welcome to Marisabel, or Marissa, as she likes to be called, to the podcast today. How are you doing?
Good, thanks, Noel. How are you doing?
I'm doing well. Let's just jump into this, and let me ask you to tell us who you are and where you grew up.
So my name is Marisabel Fernandez. I'm originally from Caracas, Venezuela, which is where I grew up. My stories, I've been jumping around for the last couple of years, but in short, I moved away from home when I was 17, and I went to study in Norway for 2 years. And then from there, I got the opportunity to go study at Ringling College in Florida for originally what was meant to be 4 years, but ended up staying there for 5 years. I started in advertising, and then I jumped to graphic design and ended up in animation, actually. Graduated as a motion graphics artist.
Wow. Okay. That was a lot just in the first sentence even. So let's see. Venezuela to Norway. That's interesting. Can you tell us anything else about that?
Yeah, sure. So it was a really cool opportunity. I got a scholarship to go study at an international school for 2 years. It's a pretty well-known organization. It's called United World Colleges. And when I went, there were about 12 schools. At this point, I think there's a couple more all throughout the world. And the main idea behind those schools is to bring basically what they call ambassadors from different countries and put them all under one single roof. And it's kind of I would say a pre-university curriculum, but you're also seeing, it's a pretty rigorous curriculum basically that you're studying. And then from there, there's actually a family that helps, that because they believe so much in the philosophy of these schools, they sponsor many of these students to go and study in the U.S., in different universities in the U.S. And so then I got a scholarship to go to Ringling College with that family.
Wow, what an amazing experience. That's super. That's amazing. That's super cool. And what made you focus on Ringling in the first place, or was that part of the deal, or is that something that you picked out specifically?
So there's basically the Davis Foundation, who's the family that gave us the scholarships. They give scholarships to over 100 schools in the United States, and from Ivy Leagues to art schools, all type of universities and colleges. Ringling College was one of the schools that I had applied for, and I got into and decided kind of last minute that I wanted to make the change. I originally wanted to do architecture, and then decided that I wanted to do more design than go into the sciences, basically.
Right. Wow. So you're a person of many, many interests. I've already realized in this interview.
Some people seem to say that I maybe can't make up my mind that much, but I happen to think it's a good trait to have.
I agree. Was there something in particular that turned you on to design in the first place, or that made you want to study that? Or, was there something that really inspired you that you saw?
So I always wanted to do something that combined art with science. 'Cause, half of my family is very artistic, and the other half of my family is very scientific in a way. They're engineers and doctors, and then the other half is they're architects and designers. So I figured that architecture would kind of be the best blend for both of them. But then after being in Norway, I kind of realized that I didn't necessarily want to go into physics and chemistry, and that what I wanted to do was actually tell stories. And I came across Ringling because of my art teacher in Norway, and completely fell in love with their intro book that they send out, kind of like their advertising book of the school and students' work. And yeah, I just kind of got hooked from there.
That's amazing that your teacher in Norway knew about Ringling. That's super cool. And what about animation? Was that something that you were always interested in, or was that something that came after you studied design?
So animation, actually, like many things in my life, kind of just I bumped into. I started, like I said, I'd started in advertising and then went into graphic design. And then while I was there, one of my best friends was actually in animation and motion graphics. And that's when I realized that really what I wanted to do was tell stories. And the best way to tell a story was through a moving picture rather than through a still. So it was a pretty big leap, because it was kind of a leap of faith, because I wasn't sure if I was going to enjoy it or not. And it was also a very technical leap, because I've never been a very technical person. And the amount of software that I had to learn by going into animation was pretty daunting. But anyways, in short, I made the leap and it worked out pretty well. And yeah.
That's great. Well, actually, that's a pretty good segue. So our students are just learning After Effects right now, basically, and as they're listening to this. So I know you just said that it was daunting for you to learn a lot of software. So was After Effects one of those pieces of software that was daunting for you to learn?
It was in the beginning. I ended up loving it. It ended up being probably one of the closest to graphic design software that we had. So I had experience in using Photoshop and Illustrator, and After Effects, it took a little bit of time to get used to, and it took a lot of late nights to kind of remember and memorize all the keys and where everything was. But then eventually I just kind of got the hang of it. I think the ones that I had probably the biggest struggle was the 3D software. Like, we were learning Cinema 4D, which I loved, but it was definitely a much more challenging thing to learn.
Yeah, I could see that, definitely. So you were learning that all at the same time, basically After Effects and Cinema 4D and maybe other things?
We learned After Effects was our main program to use in animation, and then we learned Cinema 4D, I think, if I remember correctly, it was the last 2 years, and then the last year we were introduced to Nuke as well.
Wow. Amazing. I think that program at Ringling sounds super awesome. So you found After Effects a little bit difficult to learn at first, but because you knew Photoshop and maybe Illustrator and some of the Adobe programs, you felt like you had a little bit of a leg up on it. Is that right?
Yeah, I mean, it wasn't a completely alien software to go into. I mean, I kind of understood it. It took a while. Don't get me wrong. It took a lot of tutorials, a lot of online videos, a lot of YouTube videos to learn from it. But eventually, I think after 6 months, it becomes second nature.
Mm-hmm. Right, sure, because a lot of the tools and some of the hotkeys and things are the same between it and Photoshop. I mean, do you remember anything in particular that you thought was just like super difficult about After Effects as you were learning it?
I think the main thing, which now I absolutely love, and I don't think I could animate without it, is obviously the graph, animation graph.
Are you a speed graph or a value graph person?
I started as a value graph and then changed into a speed graph.
Interesting.
Yeah. I don't quite remember why that happened, but I started value graph in college and then ended up to speed graph, I think, if I remember correctly, when I went to Giant Ant to intern. I noticed most people were using the speed graph, and then because I guess I just never really understood the speed graph when I was in college or what the point of it was, and then realized how much potential it actually had.
Right. It's kind of everything for sure.
Yeah.
So I just have to say that I watched your student film, Listen, and it's completely amazing. And anybody listening to this should definitely watch that right now, I think. Just pause this podcast and watch it because it's super awesome.
Well, thank you so much.
Yeah. Can you tell us at all about the design and animation process that you went through making it?
Yeah. Wow. It was a while ago. But still remember many nights clearly.
I remember it.
I know. Joey remembers a big chunk of it.
That's right, because Joey was one of your teachers at Ringling at that time.
Yeah, especially with animation. Okay, so I was lucky that I had a partner that kind of complemented my skills. So my strengths have always been design, concept, and animation, but mainly 2D animation. And my partner was actually really good in Cinema 4D. So the skills combined with his really complemented each other. So I think the hardest part in the beginning was the concept, because we started with something that we found fascinating. We started researching, and the more we researched about autism, which is what the film is about, the more we realized that this was definitely the right topic to do. And it was also something that's inspiring, because at the time, which I think the curriculum at Ringling has changed now, but at the time the project was for a full year. And when we first got introduced to it, I was like, oh my God, we need to do something that, first of all, knowing myself, needs to have many different types of things so that I won't get bored. And also something that you're passionate about. Because if you're just working on a commercial for a brand that you don't particularly have any connection to, then after working on it and after seeing it and having all-nighters for 3 months, you're going to get tired of it and then you're just going to stop. Whereas this was actually something that kind of kept us going because we knew that it kind of had a higher purpose.
Marissa, I have a question for you real quick about that. So, so for everyone listening, just some context. While Marissa was a senior at Ringling, happened to be the year that I was there teaching. And so I got to watch her and her partner work on this and see it turn into the amazing thing it is. One of the things that I actually... And you're right, the curriculum has changed, and I'm glad it's changed, because I actually wasn't sure it was a good idea to have students spend an entire year on one thing, because out in the industry, that just doesn't happen, right? Like, you never get a year to obsess over one project. I'm sure working at Giant Ant and at Tendril, you're probably used to schedules that last a few weeks or maybe a couple of months or something like that. So I'm wondering if you could talk a little bit about that. Like, how is the schedule different once you move from the student world into the professional world?
Oh my God, it's completely different. I mean, I think... again, like I said, it's been a couple years since I graduated, and the curriculum has definitely changed for better. But yeah, I think one of the biggest shocks was the pace of the industry. So the projects that we would get, or the projects that I was used to, were significantly long and they were very low risk. Whereas now you're in the actual industry and the project won't last more than 2 weeks. And the turnaround is very quick, but you're also working with other people, right? Like you're in a group and you have the experts of each section doing each of those things. So for the most part, you won't be doing the full project from beginning to end in 2 weeks, which kind of helps with the pace of it. But I would say that's definitely probably one of the biggest shocks, was how quickly one project went to another and another and another. And by the end of the year, we would have produced, I don't know, maybe 20 projects, whereas in college, obviously, an entire year for one single project, it's a pretty long time.
Right.
But it's also, on the other end, it also, I think, taught me a lot about self-discipline and persistence and because there were obviously days after 6 months that I just didn't even want to look at this thing. I just wanted to wake up and I just wanted it to be done, or just finish it at however it was. And then you have to kind of find that inner strength and convince yourself to keep going, that there's the light at the end of the tunnel and that you're almost there. And if you kill yourself for these couple months, it'll be worth it at the end. So I think there's good and bad things for both, but there's definitely the opportunity to learn a lot from such a long project.
Well, that's, definitely a lot to learn. So just for our students, can you catch them up so that you made this film, Listen, which is amazing, and I think you won an Adobe Design Achievement Award for it. Is that correct?
Yeah, we won 2 awards, actually, which was pretty amazing. We won the category of animation award, and then we won the overall award for the entire award, basically. I'm sorry, I'm kind of drawing a blank right now with the names of it, but we won the animation award, and then I think the other one was called the grand prize winner.
Wow. Well, congratulations on those. And I guess it was a few years ago, but so tell us, that's obviously a very prestigious thing. Tell us kind of how that impacted your life and how, I'm guessing that kind of helped lead you to becoming an intern at Giant Ant and then ultimately to work at Tendril, et cetera. But can you take us through kind of how you made that transition from school to being an award winner to then, interning?
Yeah, absolutely. So actually my internship at Giant Ant was before or during the time that I got the award. Ah. So I got the internship right before, a couple of weeks before graduating. And then I went to intern at Giant Ant. And while I was at Giant Ant is when we submitted our thesis for the Adobe Award. And then during my time there was that we got the award and we got to fly down to LA, which was pretty exciting. But yeah, I don't even know where to begin explaining that experience because it was unbelievable. The amount of talented people that we met, and it was intimidating but also very, very exciting because we got to go to the Adobe Max conference, which is parallel to the Adobe Awards, and it was 3 days of basically just meeting a bunch of amazing people, amazing artists that you've admired, that I admired for most of my time in college. And then after that, it did actually, of course, help a lot with exposure to other companies and exposure to other studios, and people started contacting me. And I don't necessarily, I think it obviously helped to get my internship at Tendril, but also the fact that I was interning at Giant Ant did also give me a big boost in general to connect with other big studios. Mm-hmm.
So you also did an internship at Tendril. I thought you just straight up worked there. Did you transition from being an intern to full-time there, or am I wrong about that?
Yeah, no, exactly. That's how it was. I was interning at Giant Ant, and then I went to intern at Tendril, and from there got hired. So one of the main things that I kind of learned in the industry in general is that, and I completely understand, not a lot of studios are willing, unless you have experience, if you're just starting out, if you're just graduating, it's not super easy to get a job straight up front because studios want to try you out. They want to make sure that they're making the right choice, and they want to make sure that you're the right fit for the company as well. So one of the best ways and one of the things that I recommend to my friends the most is just try and get a couple of internships and see what you like. A couple of internships in different types of studios that do different work, and then that way you will get more exposure to the industry itself, and then that will also help you connect with the studios for possible full-time employment.
Mm-hmm. Any tricks maybe for our students? You did get 2 internships at 2 of the best companies that I could think of. Any tricks how you did that, or any insight?
So the way that I first connected with Giant Ant was we had, during our time in college, one of the main things that I guess it must have been an assignment. One of the assignments that we had was connect with big studios and connect with big artists that you like and give them an interview and interview them and ask them a couple questions just to get their thoughts on their experience and what has led to their success. And I connected with Jay, my former boss from Giant Ant. And then from there, the more I talked to him about the company, the more I fell in love with the company, and I realized this is definitely the company I want to work for. And so I made kind of a personalized application for them, which I think is definitely something that I would recommend for anyone that wants to specifically work at a studio. Not if you're applying to just get a job anywhere, but if there's one studio that you would love to work for or that you dream of working for, then do a very personalized application for them. What I did was I made kind of a small little website for them explaining my story, because they're storytellers. I explained my story through different images and animations and kind of sold myself from there.
Wow.
So, and because I guess I had the opportunity to meet Jay before an interview with him, he kind of already knew who I was, and then we talked again, and then that's kind of where the opportunity came from.
Wow, that's a great story. And have you seen the B. Grandinetti video about wanting to intern for Giant Ant?
Yeah, it was hilarious because actually B and I applied around the same time. So B sent them the video, and I don't think I've actually ever spoken to her about this, but because the whole story is pretty funny. She sent them the video, and right when she sent them the video, and I think the video came online, I was finishing my website. I was like, oh my God, no, that's sad. Like, they're going to hire her, and I'm not going to get this opportunity. And I think, unfortunately for B, which was a really frustrating thing because it actually happened to me before, was because she didn't have, they were about to hire her and they were about to have her as the intern, but because she didn't have, I think it was Canadian papers, and at the time, the Brazilian government it was very difficult to get Canadian papers for people in Latin America, then that's the only reason she wasn't able to go.
And then you got the internship because she wasn't able to go, you think? Or
I don't know. I'm not sure. To be honest, I'm not sure. Like, I would think I am a Canadian resident, so I think that definitely helped. I don't know if she had gotten the internship and then I had sent my application, I would have gotten it as well. I think that's also a possibility, but who knows? We'll never know.
When did you become a Canadian citizen? How did that happen in this process?
I became a Canadian resident, which is another fun part of my story. My dad applied for the Canadian residence a couple of years ago because he saw that things in Venezuela weren't going in the right path. He kind of had a pretty good vision of where things were going and just applied. And it was about 10 years ago, I would say. And then we got the residence, like my entire family got the Canadian residence about 4 years ago.
That's awesome. Wow, congratulations.
So yeah, it ended up being a pretty amazing opportunity because otherwise first of all, I wouldn't be here in Toronto and I wouldn't have been able to get those opportunities at Giant Ant or Tendril or anything. So yeah.
Right. Marissa, I have a question for you about Giant Ant. So, at Ringling, I remember there was a very heavy emphasis put on concept and design. So much that at the time you were there was actually a concept class and a design class, and they were separate. And you go to Giant Ant, which is great at both of those, but was really known, especially when Jorge was there, for animation. And I'm curious what sort of things you picked up just from being around such high-level animators right out of school.
From animation specifically, or for concept as well, you mean?
For animation and just kind of like, the way that, I mean, Jorge's pretty unique in his ability to use After Effects to create such, beautiful movement out of absolutely anything. I'm just curious what sort of things you learned that maybe we can share with the students listening to this.
I think one of the main things that I learned was how to minimalize my animation, if that makes much sense. Like, I used to take, 7 or 8 different steps to get to one result, whereas a Giant Ant, they click 2 buttons and they're done. And it's amazing. I've never met such skilled animators in general. Like, Jorge is a genius in After Effects, Sean as well, Nico as well. Like, all those guys are just, it's unbelievable how skilled they are and how quick they are. But they also they think very simply. Whereas I, as a student, tended to overcomplicate myself and overstress myself for something that can be done in a much more simple way, in a much more beautiful way. Also, I think one of the things that I learned the most about them was I improved my animation significantly. Like the importance of things like anticipation and follow through and all of that, which, yeah, you hear in college and they teach you in college, and it's kind of a basic thing that you learn, but you never really understand how much that makes the entire animation. It's the beautiful movement of it that really differentiates something good from something being regular or mediocre.
Absolutely.
That's great advice about the workflow, definitely, and also just about, reducing, reducing down your animation and what you're trying to get done and how you're like just literally the number of keyframes even. So
absolutely,
that's super good advice.
And I think, sorry, if I can add to that as well, expressions is something that I very rarely used in college. Like I know Joey, we had a couple of classes about that, and it was always something that was super daunting as well, because it just seemed super technical for me. And then I just realized when I went to Giant how easy and how much it actually helps to have those things, because something that could take you maybe 20 minutes to animate, with a simple expression, you could animate in 5 minutes. It's crazy.
Right, and for our students, we haven't really gotten into expressions yet, but that's sort of like little pieces of code that you can write within After Effects to help automate certain tasks. It's a little bit advanced, and definitely it's a little bit daunting, but it's really cool, and it's something that you will get into eventually, I promise. So in like March of 2016, you kind of shifted into, you started a new job, and you also started a new role at that job as a coordinator. Can you tell us, why you made the switch?
So I think one of the parts that I was missing the most, and one of the things that I enjoyed the most in my thesis, was moving around and being in contact with different people and kind of directing things. And that's one of the parts that I realized I was missing the most in animating, is I was spending too much time in front of the computer and not enough time problem solving with other people, which is essentially where I think I kind of have the best skills is in communicating with people and problem solving. So my fiance actually was a production manager at a visual effects studio, and I started to kind of get an idea of that industry through him. And then I thought I would try it out. I kind of just said, well, it's been a couple years of this. I want to try something different. I want to change, and I want something a little bit more social and more interactive. So if anything, worst case scenario, I failed and I hated it, then I would just go back to animation. But I actually ended up liking it quite a bit. And yeah, it was again, another pretty big leap, but it worked out pretty well.
Wow. So, I mean, it's not that you necessarily are burnt out on design or animation. It's just that you wanted another challenge and you wanted to interact with people more, basically?
Yeah, I think personally, I may have overstressed myself during my time from college to internships and to my work at Tendril. And I just needed to give myself a break. Yeah. I do think I burnt myself out. I don't think it was an industry thing. I think it was just me putting way too much pressure and getting to the point where I wasn't particularly enjoying it. But having said that, now that I am on the other side, which I have found I quite enjoy as well, I definitely do miss the design part. So I think in the long run, who knows? Like I haven't made the switch completely to say I'm not animating and I'm not designing at all. I still consider myself a designer, and I still consider myself a creative by nature. Mm-hmm. But I don't know. We'll see. We'll see where this new path takes me.
Right. So for our students, there are these kind of two, paths that you might find in a studio, which is more of, there's a creative side, and then there's more of like a production side, I guess you'd call it. Mm-hmm. And could you walk our students through like what your work as a coordinator actually involves and stuff?
Sure. So visual effects is actually quite different from a boutique design studio or even a big design and animation studio. But on a regular basis, I started as a department coordinator. So in visual effects, there's different departments, just like in motion graphics, there would be the design department, the concept department, the animation department, and the compositing department. And so as a department coordinator, I was in charge of a group of artists. When I started as a compositing coordinator, and I was in charge of over 50 different artists who were all working in different films and different projects. And my role was to make sure that they were on track with their deadlines, that they knew what their deadlines were, that they were all fully tasked with work to do, and that they were also happy and enjoying the work they did. So that was my first role as a department coordinator, and then I went on to being a show coordinator, which meant I was right below the manager of a specific show. So I was working on a film, and my role was to help the manager basically take on the entire film. So anything from taking notes when we had daily reviews with the artists, or checking in on the artists and making sure again that they're on track for the deadlines, that we have everything we need for the client, then submitting reviews to the client, being in contact with the client directly. So it's a pretty different role, I would say, especially in visual effects, which is almost a parallel industry to motion graphics, but it's definitely helped so much to have an artist background and to have an animation background.
Right. I was going to ask you that, whether, your intimate knowledge of After Effects, or at least of that software, gives you a leg up or helps you out in your day-to-day role there. But it seems like you're saying yes, but if you could tell us more about that, that'd be great. Absolutely.
Yeah. I think if I had come into this coordinating job completely blank or from a business background, it would have been a very different experience. I think the fact that I know about animation, know the different things that makes an animation good. I know about Photoshop, I know about Illustrator, After Effects, I know about Cinema 4D, which is very similar to Maya, which is what they usually use. It helps me understand the pipeline so much better. And it helps me also judge and help with the supervisors. Like in a lot of shows, which is not a very common thing, but I was very grateful that I was with a small team, and a supervisor that was always open to listening to my opinions. If something was, basically if they showed us something on the screen and I had a particular design thought, then I would always share it, and whether or not it was considered, it was always welcomed, basically. And I think that's definitely something very helpful to have as a coordinator, because it just helps you understand what you're doing, and it helps you do your job so much better. And it also gives you, it helps you connect with the artists much more, because you know what they're going through. You understand why they take their work so seriously. You understand why they are so sensitive when you give them feedback. Whereas if it's someone that has never had a creative background, that's not as intuitive.
Right. You all speak the same language, basically. I mean, even just for myself on lots of jobs where coordinators just didn't know anything about After Effects, or even like the terms that you would use, it could just get really frustrating really quickly.
Exactly, yeah.
People say like, we want this to fade out. And I'm like, do they mean opacity? Or I'm trying to translate it into his yeah.
Hey, Marissa.
Or even in situations. Oh, yeah, go ahead.
Oh, Joe. Sorry. I didn't mean to like step on everybody. I have a question, because you brought up something interesting, and one of the things that we're talking about in this class, in addition to like learning After Effects, is we're trying to talk about the industry and the type of work that's out there, and sort of how things are structured out there when you get out into the real world. And you mentioned that the structure of a visual effects company is slightly different than at a motion design studio. And I think from the outside, it's really hard to tell like where one industry ends and the other begins. And is there even really a difference between visual effects and motion graphics? So I'm curious if you could just talk a little bit about what those differences really are inside a visual effects studio versus inside a place like Giant Ant, which is, a motion design studio. They're not a visual effects studio.
Of course, yeah. So, and what I'm about to say is all personal opinion. I just want to say that beforehand, because a lot of people may have a completely different perspective of it. And this is coming from someone that has worked at a very small, at a particularly small studio of like 15, 17 people, then 30 people, to a studio now of 300 people. So I think one of the main differences is the size of the studio, which makes it so much more difficult to manage, which means you have to split up the entire studio into different departments in order for there to be a better organization. So that being one of the main differences for me, I think in terms of visual effects versus motion graphics, the main aspect is, for me, is design. There's matte paintings, it's visual effects is a more realistic, or I'm trying to see how I can best say this.
More reality based or something?
Yeah, you're working with live footage in combination with design, whereas motion graphics, it's mainly all computer based or mainly all design and handmade, if that makes much sense. There's obviously, and this is more of the visual effects that I'm talking about that we work with, which is like explosions and smoke and things like that. But there's obviously the other side of visual effects, which you have Star Wars and Avatar and Harry Potter, which are complete fantasy. So none of it is particularly very realistic, but you're still working in combination with live footage. I don't if that makes much sense.
Totally. Yeah, I always think of visual effects as when you do your job really well, the audience might not ever know that you did your job. Whereas like animation and motion graphics, when you do your job really well, everybody knows you did that thing.
Everybody
That's a good way to put it.
Yeah, that is true. Yeah, I think that a lot of people say that, and I think that's very true.
Yeah,
or
like
if you're in visual effects and you do your job very well, people have no idea how that was done. Like, they create a creature that looks so real that you believe that it actually exists, but you know it doesn't.
Yeah. Within the world of visual effects, I mean, is there something that you really love working on as a coordinator? Or, I mean, is it all the same and good to you? Or do you have any other specialty?
I think one of the things that I've enjoyed the most is just to see what we were just talking about, like things that I had no idea were even possible to do. Because for me, with my background, it's more just design and the combination of colors and the combination of things, but they're all very obvious that they're not real. Whereas these artists are taking a picture and then adding a bunch of things to it, or are taking a video and adding a whole bunch of things to it that it's just amazing to me how they even go about creating that. Mm-hmm. And it's also because I guess motion graphics I have experience in and I know how to do. Visual effects and the CG and the compositing part, it's just something that I would have absolutely no idea how to even go about it.
Mm. Yeah, I was going to ask you that because I guess Tendril, at least when I think of Tendril's work, I think of a lot of CG, like very glossy, really slick CG. So I was wondering if you worked in that level on CG when you were there at all.
Not particularly. So Tendril has the amazing part that it's kind of both. It's both a design 2D studio and it's also a design 3D studio. So they have them as separate departments. They sometimes work together, but for the most part, they have their CG and 3D team and the compositing team and all of that. And then they have the 2D animators, illustrators that work on different types of projects. There's, for many parts, I think I may have worked maybe 2 or 3 projects with the 3D department, and it was mainly for pitches. But when it comes, or if you're doing like character animation, then we would do the character designs, and then they would turn those characters into 3D, which was really cool because it's kind of a blend of both worlds. But for the most part, we wouldn't, because it's such different software, we wouldn't necessarily be part of it as much.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. So you just said blend, which is a nice segue for me, since I know I know that you were one of the coordinators for Blend. Is that right? For at least the first Blend?
Yeah. So we started it. It's kind of also another crazy story. Like Jorge and I were having a coffee once, and he was telling me about how he had this amazing idea with Sonder about starting this kind of coffee, like wine after coffee event every now and then in Vancouver specifically, because that's where we were based. And then we started talking about the possibility of actually making it a big event, because for so many of us, really wanted to go to the big festivals like F5 and all those festivals, but because they were so far, it was just impossible. And there was nothing really like that on the West Coast of North America, or even, like the West Coast in general. So we started discussing the possibility of starting an event like that. And then we got Teresa involved and Claudio involved, and then just kind of worked out. And from there is when the first blend originated, which was kind of crazy.
It was amazing. And were you involved at all in the second blend too, or just the first?
I was involved in the beginning of the second one, but then with everything, with the change of career and everything, it was just getting a little bit too crazy. So I decided to step down and just kind of participate and help from afar. But it was just going to end up being, more of a hassle, I think, in the end.
I guess you would move to the East Coast by that point also. So
yeah, exactly. I was living in Toronto, which wasn't a problem because Sandra was in New York and Claudio was in London. But I didn't have the time or capacity to be able to dedicate as much time as I wanted to. And I figured it was just better if I stepped down.
Mm-hmm. Any parallels that you might want to draw between sort of coordinating a live event and visual effects? I don't know if there's any.
Absolutely, yeah. So I guess thank you for reminding me of that. So that was actually another reason for why I decided to go into it, was because I loved everything that had to do with organizing Blend. So Teresa was actually an amazing mentor to learn from, because she's a producer at Giant Ant. And she was the producer at Blend. So I was working kind of below her and learning from her. And I kind of fell in love with everything that had to do with organizing events and moving around and troubleshooting. But then at the same time, I was also helping design part of it. So I was getting a little bit of both worlds. But then after Blend and around December is when I started to really think about, well, maybe I should give this a try. And then with my fiance being in the visual effects industry, I kind of realized, well, maybe this is the perfect thing to try out and see.
So Blend changed your life as well, basically.
Absolutely. Well, it changed my life in so many ways, but yes, this being one of the main ones.
I feel like it had that effect on a lot of people. Definitely, it was a special occasion.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I guess we're kind of wrap this up basically, but I did want to ask you if you had any plans to make another short film at any point, because your first one was so awesome. I just want to see more work from you.
I have thought about it. It's also a little bit daunting because it's like, well, I don't know. It's like when people say you write a book that's a success and then you're never able to write the same level of book, which I don't know. I don't know if I believe. I've been wanting to do another film. I think I just need to find another partner or a team to do it, because I don't think I would be able to do it all on my own. Also based on something with mental disorders. So another type of PSA maybe, but for now I haven't really, it's been a crazy couple months, let's just say that. Haven't really had a chance to sit down and really go through it, but who knows? It'll come at some point, I think, definitely. Just not sure when.
I have a question if I could ask one.
Sure.
Get in there. So, you've been out in the industry for a few years now, and I'm sure that all of the preconceptions you had about what it would be like to be, a quote, adult and a professional, those get shattered pretty quickly. But now you've got this interesting skill set that, and everyone sort of finds their own path. And you've found this path from design into animation into now producing and coordinating. And I'm curious if you are, how far out you're trying to plan. Some people, they get into the field and they immediately start thinking about their 10-year plan. And I'm curious if you've thought about that in ways that you might actually use all of these skills that you've built, to be able to coordinate and produce and still create. Are you thinking that far ahead?
I think I have, but then I've also, with just thinking about how much things have changed in the past 5 years, even in the past 2 years, even in the past 6 months, I've kind of realized that planning 10 years ahead, although it's great and it's a good thing to get you started and get your kind of brain thinking about what your next step is going to be, it's not necessarily as realistic. So I'm trying something new, which is very very different for me, is to take it kind of 6 months at a time. So where am I going to be in the next 6 months? And then from there, then we'll see. I think eventually I would definitely like to utilize all of those skills, like direct or do kind of my own little film on the side. But in terms of what my plans are, or if I plan to go back into animation or design in the next year, or to start my own studio in the next couple of years, I'm not sure.
I love that you said that because, you know, I think a lot of people that get into the industry, and probably some of the students listening to this right now, get in with this idea that I'm going to learn After Effects and I'm going to be an animator, I'm going to be a designer, and then one day I'll open my own studio. And the truth is that this industry is so weird and it changes so fast that there's absolutely no way. And I am proof of that. You cannot possibly predict what you'll be doing in 4 years. So I wanted to hear your perspective, because you're still at the beginning of your career and you've got many years to kind of work through all of this stuff. And so, yeah, I'm glad you had that insight, and thanks for sharing that.
Absolutely. Well, I mean, I think I'm kind of the perfect example of it's kind of impossible for me to plan something, because in the past 5 years, I went from advertising to graphic design to animation to production. So who knows where I'll be in the next 5 years? It's very difficult to predict.
Right on.
Right on. Well, this has been quite a pleasure for us to talk to you. So thank you so much.
Thank you guys so much. It was awesome meeting you, Noel, and it was great talking to you again, Joey.
Okay, I want to thank Marissa again for speaking with us today. I really enjoyed this, and I really enjoyed meeting with her. I think this is an amazing interview, and she's a really great, poised speaker who's very honest, and I think she has a lot of great things to say about life and work and this industry. I definitely think you should keep your eye on her and follow her in social media, because I just know that she's going to continue to do great things in her career. And there's some really good advice in here. In particular, I love the way that she talks about embracing change and not to be afraid of what's coming up next, and to actually look forward to that. You know, she went from advertising to graphic design to animation and then to producing in, a pretty short period of time. And it's clear to me that she really knows how to roll with the punches and stay on top of herself. And that, that's not easy to have that level of awareness, especially at a young age, about things that are changing around you. I think a lot of people think, I'll just do this one thing and then I'll stay doing that forever. And, that's really not how life works. And I just thought it was really inspiring to hear her talk about that. And I hope all of you enjoyed it as well. The next time you're confused about anything relating to stewed cranberries or prunes, definitely let me know.